Annie Kunz, welcome to the Soccer Queens podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
I have been waiting for this conversation because you and I both know Cynthia Monteleone, who recommended you. And I just am so excited to hear about your training, your nutrition, and everything you're doing as an Olympian who was also a former Division I soccer player. So,
Yeah.
very interesting journey and just super inspiring. Let's just start off with just your childhood and
Mhm.
what sports you were doing. Were you always into soccer and track? Like, how did this all unfold?
Yeah. Well, I'm the youngest of three. So my brother and sister are 8.5 and 10 years older than me. So I kind of would get dragged to their stuff really at a young age. And then I'm 6 feet tall. So I was always tall for my age. And so my mom actually put me in, I think it was the 50-yard dash when I was like, I think I was like 2.5. And you were supposed to be a little bit older, but I was tall for my age. And so she threw me in there. So I've actually been running track since I was two, and then started soccer when I was 3 years old. So my parents kind of threw me in everything growing up, and track and soccer were the two that I loved the most and kind of was excelling in the most. And soccer obviously is a team sport. So that to me took more of my focus and time throughout my life just because, track's more of an individual thing. So it was like, if I can show up to meets, I'll do that. But soccer, I had teammates and things like that. So I prioritized soccer more so for sure. I did both in high school. I'm from Colorado, and in Colorado, they're in the same season. So kind of the same thing where I would just show up to track meets when I could, and just practice with the soccer team, prioritize that. But excelled in both through high school, and then went on to go to A&M, Texas A&M on a full ride scholarship for soccer, but wanted to do both. So going through that process, I was trying to figure out what school was going to let me do both, and A&M was the one. And I did both track and soccer all 4 years there. I did a fifth year of just track and field, and that's kind of like when track took off for me, and I went professionally that way. But
Wow, that is so amazing. Now let's
yeah.
come back to your childhood. So, what
Mhm.
was your parents' role in this? Were they super involved, or did they just let you develop that passion for both soccer and track?
I look back and I'm actually really grateful for the way that my parents handled all of that. I feel like I always had the say in what I wanted to pursue, what I wanted to focus on. They would give me the resources, and always have conversations with me. Do you want to do more track? Are you happy with soccer? Do you like this team? I've had friends where the parents kind of made the decisions for them, and I look back at my childhood, and I'm really grateful because I never felt that from my parents. I always felt support, and like they were gonna let me decide what I loved and what I wanted to do. Um, and it got tricky because track and soccer are in the same season, and I felt a lot of pressure, especially from like club soccer. I think there's a lot of pressure to like pigeonhole kids and into one sport really young. And my parents were always really supportive of me doing multiple sports. They thought it was going to be better for me. I wouldn't get burnt out. And so they never really pigeonholed me into like one thing or pressured me to do anything. I think I've always kind of had like an innate drive. I think that's kind of something that you can't teach, that I've just kind of had that drive to stay longer after practice, or I'm going to go to track practice after I have soccer practice, or things like that. But my parents were always very much letting me be in the driver's seat. And I really appreciated that. And they never forced me to, just focus on clubs so I can get the scholarship. They really allowed me to have balance. And I think that, I don't know, I think it made me a better athlete in the long run.
So interesting. I just hear this universal answer with a lot of high level athletes I interview that their parents were pretty laid back in the process and they just
Mhm.
checked in every now and then and
Yeah.
they asked the right questions rather than making the decision for you.
Yeah.
And then you were able to really think and use discernment and figure out what you wanted to do, which is
Yeah.
super interesting. That's always the story I get from professional athletes and Olympians
Is
in their
it?
childhoods. It's usually the opposite. The parents are less involved and overbearing.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. I think it just like it gives you your voice. It makes you more in tune with what you actually want. I think it allows you to trust yourself more. So yeah, that's actually really interesting, I think, to hear. And I'm glad it's that way because I don't want I think that sometimes when there is more pressure um or just overbearing parents when it comes to sports, or sometimes you hear people like kind of living through their kids and pushing them in a certain direction. I think it takes the fun out of it, and that's why we do the sports, right? Like it's supposed to be fun, you're supposed to love it. And so when there's more pressure, I just think it takes away the fun aspect a little bit.
It's so interesting that you say that with doing 2 sports, you were able to really see that you had all these passions, and
Mhm.
had you not tried track when you were young, I mean, who knows what would have been happening today? I mean, would you
Yeah.
still be continuing your career and being an Olympian? And if parents force that single sport too young, then you don't know what the potential is.
Yeah.
And you don't know what other opportunities await, and I think playing
Hmm.
multiple sports opens up more doors, and it
Hmm.
does also help with keeping girls healthy and working different muscle groups and making sure mentally they're not getting sick of the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I think it's crucial. I think that I'm really glad that I stood my ground and kind of and I think that my parents, raising me the way they did and how it came to sports, they allowed me to trust myself and know what I wanted and know what I liked. Um, but I think that there's so much pressure to have kids, especially nowadays, decide at such a young age what they're going to pursue full time, be all in it. And while that is important, you need to be disciplined and dedicated to your sport. I think that, like you mentioned, me doing both sports, the mental aspect I think is huge because I got to switch gears. I'd be all in at soccer, and then I get to switch gears and go have fun at track. I had different friend groups. I'm using different muscle groups that complement each other. I think track and soccer really do complement each other. So that was fun. So I'm doing things that are going to help soccer. I'm doing things that are going to help track in both sports. But I'm not getting burnt out and I'm still enjoying the sport. Like I really don't think I started to feel burnout maybe until my professional career. And I think that's so well into my 20s. And I think that's really special because I think you do hear a lot of burnout and I always say to athletes, I'm like, if it's not fun anymore, you need to really sit with yourself and reevaluate like why are you doing it? What's your why? And I didn't struggle with that really at all up until maybe a couple years ago of just feeling the burnout of and the pressure of being a professional athlete.
Now, what was your recruiting process like for college? You mentioned you wanted to go to a school where you could do both sports. Were you looking at other schools? What was the final decision for Texas A&M?
Yeah, that was an interesting process because soccer obviously recruits a lot earlier. So like freshman sophomore year, you're basically you have like most of us made our decisions by like sophomore year, whereas track, you're not really getting fully recruited until like your senior year and you make the decision. So it's a much different timing. So with that, I would find the schools that were really interested in me. I would look at their track programs and see if it's a program that would interest me as well. And then on all of my recruiting trips, I would make a point to talk to the coach first, the soccer coach, and be like, "Are you willing to let me do this? Is this even an option?" If they were, then we would, find the track coaches and talk to them and see if they'd be willing for me to do both as well. And I felt going through that process, which also is just really hard. As you're a freshman, you're like a freshman, sophomore in high school. You don't know really what you want yet. So it can be a little bit overwhelming, but I felt that there were some coaches. I was looking at like North Carolina's at the time. They were like the mecca of soccer. Um, I was really, really interested in them. I was really interested in Florida State University. That was probably my second option to A&M, with their just how great their track and their soccer program was. And I felt like those coaches actually were willing to have me do both along with Virginia Tech and then A&M. So those were like my top four schools that I was really looking at. I wanted to get away. I wanted to go to like a new state and start do something new where I didn't know anybody. And A&M at the time was also coming off of the triple double in track and field. So they had won national championships for the men and women 3 years in a row. So I was like, well, can't get better than that track program. Coach Pat Henry is the most winning coach of track history. So that was super enticing. And then A&M was consistently like a Sweet 16 soccer team. And then my class that ended up going in, we had like 10 of us. We ended up being like the best class that they've ever had. And we had a great run there. So when I was going through the recruiting process, A&M and Florida State and Virginia Tech were the ones that were like, okay, well, you can do both. But I felt like it was the most genuine from A&M because like when I went on my recruiting trips, they really went above and beyond to show me not to just like make empty promises, but they like sat down with me. We sat down with the track coach. We went over like what the scheduling would look like. Okay, like on a Monday, you're going to go throw jab and shot put on your recovery day for soccer in the fall. And then how we would transition from me going from in season in the fall to in season basically in the winter when track would start. They showed me what the day-to-day would look like, and so I really felt like they meant what they said, and I could trust them in that they were going to let me do both sports, and that ultimately made the decision. And that I just loved A&M, the campus and the school and everything. I loved it down there.
So what was the transition like from college sports to now your professional career?
That was a really hard transition, I'll be honest. I think that when you go to a school like Texas A&M that is so sport oriented, it's a Division 1 school. They have massive support. They have massive funding. So everything is taken care of for you. Like when you're on travel trips, you're fed, you got treatment, you have your hotel, everything is taken care of. And then as you switch to professional in track and field, at least it's not a huge sport in the US. I think it'd be different if I was like in Europe. There's not lot of support. There's not a lot of funding. There's not a lot of places to go if you want to pursue track professionally. Most people will stick with their college coach if they allow that, if they still want to coach you. But with that, like they're prioritizing the college team because so their schedule, all of that is the college team. You just try to make it work when you can. Um, I was fortunate enough to get recruited from the 2016 Olympic trials. I went in there and I had the meet of my life at that time. I broke the school record, so I think I finished eighth overall, or no, sixth, no, sixth or eighth, I can't remember. And so I got recruited there to come train full time at the Olympic Training Center in Chula Vista, and I'm so beyond grateful for that because I don't know that I would have made it post collegiately if I hadn't had that resource. Because it's basically like a little compound where they have like a dining hall, they have sports med clinic, they kind of helped us at the time. They had funding to help us with like domestic travel meets, so it was like a little bit of an easier transition. But it's just hard because it's all on you. Like it all has to come from you. No one is going to hold your hand through anything, and that learning curve is really hard. And then also, I think just the learning curve of the nutrition aspect and like learning my metabolics and my metabolism slowed down, and I didn't know how to fuel myself properly, and all of that I had to figure out on my own, and that was really hard.
Let's get into that. So, what tweaks did you have to make in that transition to really get an edge in your performance and to continue to improve? I know you made some big nutrition changes. So, what were some of those changes?
Yeah, gosh. I mean, I look back at like even at A&M, I think I struggled, and I think it's as females, our bodies are so complex. It's so different from males, like with our hormones and um, just everything about women. Everyone is so different, and so I really struggled even in college to figure out. In high school, I was like super skinny. My metabolism was great. It slowed down a lot, probably like my sophomore year of college. Um, and kind of like the freshman, whatever, freshman 10, freshman 15. Soccer also is very different because we ran so much. You can kind of get away with eating different things and not being too worried about it. And then track is totally different, where like it comes down to milliseconds. So your body fat percentage and things like that are really important, your muscle mass um, ratios. And so I kind of bouncing back between the two was kind of hard, because I'd have like more muscle from soccer in my legs, and then I have to transition to soccer or into track. And I never really felt like I met nutritionists that actually helped me in college. I really struggled, so I was just on my own. It felt like trying to, just throw a noodle at the wall and hope it sticks and see kind of what works for my body. I felt like I kind of started figuring that out towards the end of my college career. But I mean, maybe we had like coaches that would come to me and say like, if you lost like 5 pounds, you'd be so much better, and like things like that that really mess with you mentally. So I struggled with the nutrition aspect probably until I met Cynthia. Because I just didn't know how to fuel properly. I really would, even once I got to the training center in Chula Vista, my training partners' metabolisms were like insane. They'd eat like, I'm like, I remember one night my training partner was like, "Yeah, I had Totino's pizza last night," and I'm like, "Are you kidding?" Like, I'm like killing myself trying to eat healthy, and it's not. I'm not seeing any results. I gained, I think I gained like 10 pounds post collegiate, like from like the prime of my collegiate career transitioning. I got injured. And then coming back from that injury was really hard. My body, I gained like 10 pounds. I could not for the life of me like trim down and get lean. And I really struggled mentally with that, until I met Cynthia, and she just completely changed my life. Like, to be completely honest, and not even just in a performance aspect, but a health aspect of just really giving me tools and knowledge that finally worked for me. And I am so grateful for that. I met her kind of like a God thing. It's just everything happens for a reason. I was like on vacation with my boyfriend's family. I met, and her husband was our bartender at our hotel, and so we like got to chatting that way. Yeah, and he was like, "I think my wife could really help you." We ended up like going with Zane and his and their boys to like a local waterfall and like hanging out with them. And it was the end of our trip, so I actually didn't meet her on that vacation, but she was in Long Beach at a track meet. She was running masters track and field, and reached out to me. We got dinner, and she just like, I was all in after that dinner. She blew my mind with her knowledge, and I did everything she told me to. She talked a lot about how like, because my she does this pinch test thing, and so like, and we've done like DEXA scans in college where they'll get your like body fat percentage, but it doesn't pinpoint where you're storing fat and why. And that was the biggest thing that I think she showed me, where she does this pinch test. She'll take all these points of your body and figure out how much fat you have and where you're storing your fat and why. And like, so for me, for example, like my hamstrings and my butt and my thighs was always like my problem area. I'm like, I cannot for the life of me trim down there. And she's like, "Oh, well, that means you're storing toxins in your body. So we need to like detox, and you need to get all the toxins out." She's like, "What are you using with fragrance?" I'm like, "Well, I burn candles all the time. I'm using dry shampoo every single day with fragrance in it. Like everything I had fragrance." She's like, "Okay, we'll get rid of everything of that. You're going to only use like things with essential oil. We're not burning candles anymore. Like things like that." That I'm like, I've never heard this in my life. So I did all of that. She put me on a protocol strictly for my body. And that's the thing too. It's like there's so many like one size fits all things. And I just feel like Cynthia really looked at my body and what my body needs to perform and get it to optimal performance, and how I can handle carbs really well. I didn't think that. I can have potatoes, but you need to have them at night. She put me on a full eating protocol, a supplement protocol, where she found out where my deficiencies were, where my hormone imbalances were, and put me on a supplement protocol specifically for my body to balance everything out. And then the way I eat and how I eat was totally different. She had a whole list of foods that you'd think were healthy that I'm like, that weren't good for me. So it was just like she blew my mind, and I went all in on everything. And this was like, I was in season, and I was at like probably the fittest I had been since I had been a professional athlete. So I didn't think I had as much to lose, but I lost. This was, I think, in like April. So I think in 6 weeks, so to like nationals, I lost 6% body fat. I PR'd a foot and a half in the long jump. I had a personal best in the hurdles, and then I had an overall personal best in the heptathlon score. I made my first world championships team and placed like 11th in the world that year. And I was like, finally, I was like, this is it. I figured it out. This is amazing. So I was all in, and I've been eating that way and doing that ever since. And it's completely changed my life.
I love hearing that, and I've heard a lot of these amazing stories with Cynthia and some of
Yeah.
the people she's worked with. I've done her protocol as well, and I still do it, but
Yeah.
you just really have to unlearn everything you've been taught. And I find it so interesting that you said that you were supposedly doing everything right in college and eating quote unquote healthy, but you were
Yeah.
still not getting a body composition that was ideal for performance.
No.
So, what were you eating before
Yeah.
that you thought was good for you? Like, what did your day consist of for food?
Yeah, well, even like the nutritionists that I work with, they're like, okay, do like the food diary and like keep a log of like however many days and let's go over it. So I would do that. And I remember sitting with them and like one of like the one even at this is at the Olympic Training Center. So this is supposed to be the best of the best, best in the world. And I was sat there and she looked at everything. She's like, "Oh yeah, looks like you're doing pretty good. Like you've got your carbs in the morning, like you've got like Greek yogurt, like you have salads in there, like." And I was eating, I remember eggs. I was eating eggs every morning. Um I would do like I think I'd do like a scramble in the morning. Maybe like if it was a harder day, I'd throw in like um not a biscuit, but like a muffin thing with like peanut butter and like banana. Or I do like oatmeal in the morning. I was like my thing before meat. So I was like, okay, I got my oatmeal and my eggs, and I'm good to go. That was like my college breakfast, and it's so funny too because I never my energy like was just so like even just getting on the line to warm up, I just felt like I was dragging. I didn't have the energy to like get through practice, and my body composition wasn't where it was at. So I wasn't eating enough protein. I was eating the wrong type of carbs all day, the wrong type of carbs. I wasn't eating actually
What were you snacking on usually?
snacks were like I have like pretzels like in the afternoon sometimes. I honestly didn't snack much too because I felt like I was just trying I like didn't I wanted to lose
Mhm.
weight, and so I wasn't snacking probably enough. I wasn't eating the right snacks. I would do like rice cakes. I would have like, like a cereal at night or like a gluten-free or like granola with like a Greek yogurt or something like that. So like things like that that my nutritionists were telling me, yeah, that's a great option. Like, and I remember she looked at my food diary and she like tweaked like maybe one thing. I think she said like at night if I didn't want a Greek yogurt, I could do like protein, like a protein shake or something. And that was like the one tweak that she made. And then Cynthia, like, she's like, okay, well, we're eating like steak in the morning. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? She's like, we're eating steak in the morning. You're gonna have either steak, chicken, salmon with like nuts or avocado and like some berries. And I'm like, all right. And I remember the first 2 weeks, it was kind of hard. It was like weird. I'm like, this is so bizarre. I'm eating like, I'm cooking a steak in the morning. And now I literally can't imagine my life without it. I'm like, my mouth waters in the morning for steak. My energy shot through the roof. Like I had so much energy to get through practice. I could sustain. She had me drinking a protein shake as soon as I was done within like within an hour of finishing training, with the supplements that she gave me, like glutamine and glutamine, which is or glutamine from ATP Labs, which is like glycine and glutamine or glutamine. Sorry.
I love
Um.
ATP. I have their grass-fed
Oh,
whey right here. It's
it's
so
the best,
good.
isn't it? So good.
It's
It's the best.
amazing.
Yeah. And even that, she gave me that, and she's like that. They're based out of Canada, and their protocols are way cleaner. They have like a windowsill test to make sure there's no dust in the rooms where they make all their products. Like it's super clean. So yeah, got me connected with them. I mean, it was a lot of here are the foods that are going to be good for you, and here's when to eat them and why, and like have your carbs, but make sure they're colored potatoes at night. You're having fruit like berries during the day, or an apple or a pear for a snack with like almond butter. Um, instead of peanut butter because like we don't want peanuts. So it was just a lot of knowledge that I had. Like you're right, you have to unlearn. But I bought into it, and I'm like, why is this not being taught in high school and college? And it's just like there's so much misinformation I feel like out there about nutrition and how to fuel properly, and just how to have better health. So she's just completely changed my life, and it shows. I mean, I've gotten to where I am because of that. I really don't think that I would have gotten to where I am if I didn't have those resources, and I'm forever grateful.
It's so amazing when you get on board with this lifestyle and you
Mhm.
increase your protein, you have your steak, you figure out what carbs your body responds best to,
Yeah,
mainly nature's carbs like
right.
potatoes and berries and apples or cherries. And you
Mhm.
get rid of the nonsense like the pretzels, the Cheez-Its, the cereals, and your energy just shoots up and you
Oh,
have so much more focus and calmness as an athlete,
mhm.
and those benefits alone make you want to stick with it. You don't
Yeah,
feel deprived or like this is some restrictive plan because a lot of people from the outside are like, "Wow, you're very
yeah.
limited with foods," but you don't feel that way at all, I'm
I
assuming.
don't. No,
Yeah.
not at all. And it is. It's like it's one of those things that once you see, and I'm not even seeing just the results. Obviously, when you're an athlete and you see the results on the field or on the track or whatever, you're like, okay, I'm in. I'm like addicted to this. This is making me do well. But it's not even that. It's like everything you said is just feeling better, and your energy is feeling better. You're feeling more clarity. Your mood swings are better. Your mood is better. When you see results like that, and I think also, Cynthia's she showed me so many alternatives where, and she has like a cookbook and things like that where I've been doing it for so long that I've found so many recipes and things like that. Especially now, I think things are turning where a lot of the information is coming out. People are doing more carnivore, paleo, whatever. And there's things that I've found recipes and desserts that I can have. It's not like I'm sitting there feeling like I'm dieting for the last 8 years. Like it's just a way of life. It's a lifestyle that I don't ever feel like I'm restricted. And then you'll have the night or day or whatever where you go indulge in something, and then you feel like crap, and you're like, this is why I don't eat this way. Like I'm like, this is terrible. So
Or you,
it
like,
does.
break
Right.
out and get acne or
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I
yeah.
have like the dairy and my breakout or whatever. So yeah, it's once you see just how much better you feel and the results, it's really easy to stick to. And I think there's so many alternatives and options nowadays. And yeah, so it really doesn't feel hard.
So walk me through your meals again for breakfast. It's,
Mhm.
steak and then berries and nuts?
Yeah. So
Okay.
like for like meats, like for heptathlon, for example, I'm basically the night before and then the full 2 days. So like by the end of a hep, I'm usually kind of sick of steak. I'm like, okay, I need a few days off because I'm eating it for dinner, breakfast, during my meet, and then at dinner. Like because steak is going to give you natural creatine, it's going to boost your testosterone naturally. So it's an amazing thing that you can eat when you're competing. And so then I'll usually do like macadamia nuts for my fat, and then I'll do like berries, and then I'll pack my nuts, I'll pack my berries. I'll get like either grass fed beef sticks for during my competition, or I'll even make a steak and just cut it up into little pieces and put it in a baggie and keep it on ice or whatever. But that's when I've opened up that like during meets, people are like, what the hell is this girl
Yeah, and
doing?
they got their, like, goo packs and gels
Yeah.
and
Oh, and
simple
that's the thing
carbs
too.
and all that, yeah.
Yeah, I see people like and like even training partners and professional athletes where it's still like kind of this old way of eating and fueling. That I look at so many people and I'm like, if you were fueling yourself properly, like the sky, like your ceiling is so much higher. Um, so yeah, that's usually kind of what I eat. I'll do like a strip steak usually, um or like during like just like training weeks. I'll The other thing that she taught me is like not to eat the same thing every day, and you see that a lot with people where they're like, okay, I'm gonna have the same thing every single day. This is my breakfast. I'm gonna have like the rice with chicken and veggies at lunch or whatever. They like meal prep that. Cynthia taught me that's going to cause inflammation in your body. So you never want to eat the same thing every single day. So I kind of would have like a rotation, where, I'd either have like steak with berries and nuts, or I cook salmon in the morning with a different nut. So I do like raspberries, macadamia nuts and steak, and then I'm gonna have blackberries, and I'm gonna have a chicken thigh, and I'm gonna have, whatever berry that day, and kind of rotate it. Or I'll do like grass fed, those like Teton sausages that are really good. I like those for the morning for a different like red meat source. Yeah, so I'd have that. And then I usually have like a vegetable and a good amount of protein at lunch with my protein shake right after I'm done competing or training for the day. Then I come home and have a snack, I usually would do like apples with, or like almond butter, or like plantain chips. I really like plantain chips. Those are a good option. Like the paleo ones that are just coconut oil and plantains. And that usually like those are like on my heavier, like harder days where I can have more carbs. And then at night I'm throwing in my potatoes. So like any type of colored potato, and I'd rotate those as well. So I'd have like a red potato one night and then like sweet potato the next night, or yellow potato French fries. That's like my favorite thing to do. I'm like, I'm making French fries at night. Like I'm really not depriving myself, you know?
Yeah, and
Uh,
homemade french fries are so good.
they're so good
So
and they're so much
good.
better. Get an air fryer, like they're so good.
Yes.
And yeah, like, and then at night, I would have chocolate every single night. Like I always would have like a dark chocolate. I would get the one that has like, like 60% cacao, so it's a little bit better. So I don't ever feel like I'm like, there's some athletes I'm like, I haven't had dessert in 6 months. And I'm like, what? Like that's like an extreme level. So I feel like I had balance. I'm eating things that are just whole foods that are nutrient dense, that are keeping me satisfied and keeping me fuel, that increase my performance and just get me to optimal performance. I think that's the biggest thing. So yeah, it's kind of like a day of eating that I would have, and how I would like structure my weeks and stuff.
Now, my last question is, what other benefits have you seen from this beyond sport performance? Have you seen hormonal benefits with your
Oh my god.
cycle or skin and beauty benefits? I mean, just things that women care about.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
else have you seen?
Oh my god, yeah, for sure. My skin for sure is one. I think when you cut out dairy, you're gonna really see a difference in your skin. You're not gonna get the breakouts. My cycle also was, and I was also on birth control when I met Cynthia. She's like, get off of birth control. It's like the worst thing in the world. It's literally poison. I'm like, don't get on birth control. Especially as a female athlete, like there's just so many stories I think of women, getting on birth control for cramps or whatever, and it's a band-aid. I think that your cycle is signaling, like when you have symptoms, it's signaling something is imbalanced, you're deficient in magnesium or whatever. And that's kind of what she taught me as well. So once I got off birth control and switched to Cynthia's protocol, I am like clockwork. It's like 28 days. I have like two hard days. Like by day 3 we're chilling, and like it's like clockwork. It's completely different than what it used to be. I used to have like horrible cramps. I used to my periods would be much longer. I would break out really bad. So that's completely changed. My hair even has gotten healthier. My nails, it's like going to the nail salon is annoying because they grow so fast. They're like really healthy. My hair has gotten thicker, I think, since working with her. I used to have like really fine, thin hair, and it's gotten a lot thicker and healthier. Um, and yeah, so those are probably the biggest health benefits, I think. They're beauty benefits that I've seen. And honestly, yeah, just your cycle that's like a huge thing. And Cynthia even works with women that are trying to get pregnant. Like she's helped so many of my friends that were struggling to get pregnant, which is such a big thing nowadays. It's so sad that infertility is so prevalent. But it just goes to show that diet and exercise can literally change every aspect of your health, and it's just not talked about in Western medicine. And I think it's upsetting because it really does change so much of your life.
It's so crazy. Your story sounds so similar to others I've interviewed with the menstrual cycle, that it is
Mm.
super regular. They know exactly when it's coming and it's not as painful as it used to
Yeah.
be. And it's shorter. So instead
Yeah.
of being a full 7 days heavy, it's like 4 or 5 maybe. And I
Yeah.
find that super interesting. And the fertility thing, I mean, it does really come down to diet and lifestyle, and women making sure they're getting enough calories and really embracing protein and those healthy
Yeah.
fats for their hormones. I think too long we've been sold this lie to have low fat everything, and
Mhm.
it's okay to have sugar and yeah, maybe from time to time, but
Yep.
chronically, no. And I think a lot of nutritionists are really coddling young female athletes. Oh, it's okay, like have your sugar and Cheez-Its, don't
Mhm.
label food as
In
bad.
moderation or
Yeah,
whatever, and yeah.
moderation this, and I'm like, you can't tell a teenage girl to moderate because it's way more than just a psychological thing. She has to change her metabolism, her neurotransmitters, and maybe
Mhm.
food addiction and behaviors. It's way more
Yeah.
than just telling someone, "Oh, you need to moderate."
Yeah, it's so much deeper than that, and it's such a broader scope, and I think that, especially with girls, I think we've been taught that, like, oh, if you're gonna eat more protein, you're gonna get bulky, or like you're gonna gain weight, you're gonna gain too much muscle, and it's like I was eating probably like twice as much protein, and I looked leaner and fitter than I've ever been. Like, truly. And so it's just it's like you said earlier, like, you just have to relearn and like really dig for the right information, which is like, I think it's coming out a lot more. And I'm so glad it's being talked about, and like just the chronic disease epidemic that's going on in this country. And I think people are finally learning about it, and the right information is finally getting out there. So I love platforms like this where you actually talk about this stuff, because it's so important. And just from my experience as a professional athlete and Olympian, it's made the world of difference. So being able to share that knowledge is huge with the young athletes, because I wish I would knew this stuff when I was in high school, because I would have been so much better than I am. So
It is crazy, and we'll just keep spreading the message and getting the word out there for girls to embrace their red meat and nature's
yeah,
carbs and berries and potatoes and single
yeah.
ingredient foods. It's just
Mhm.
it's so simple, and it's sad that it's all seen as restrictive, but when you start doing it for some time, you realize it's very liberating.
It is. It's liberating, and yeah, it's so funny too, because like you look at Europe, and even like their labels will have like 3 labels on a yogurt. Ours has like 20. So it's like we
Yeah.
really need to change things in the States. It's sad, because you really do have to dig for the right stuff. But I'm glad for platforms like this where we can talk about it more and share that information with the younger athletes, because it's going to make them so much better.
Well, I'm going to include your social media handles in the caption
Yeah.
below so everyone can follow you. You have such amazing content and just sharing your
Oh,
journey as
yeah.
a professional athlete, and everything that you're doing in a day is so fun to watch. So I'll include all of that, and I appreciate you coming on, and I will see everyone next time.